Search on India Data Hub is the most basic and sort of simplest way of looking for data and interacting with data. So you start by from the home page of India Data Hub, click on search, and you get a search bar where you can type sort of what data you're looking for, GDP or inflation, or you can search the data through, let's say, categories. And if you click on categories, you will see all the categories under which data is classified. So what you see in bold here, in blue, these are all the categories in which data exists. And what you see as sort of the light or the second row in each of the cards is the subcategories in which the data is classified. So let's say you want to look for GDP data, so you can say national accounts and GDP. So I want to look, so it will show all the indicators which have category as national accounts and subcategory as GDP. And you see this, so you will see all of this. Now, a few things to note here before we go to the next step. So this the first line that you see in the bold is the title of that indicator. So real PFC is private final consumption expenditure on domestic market, 2011-12 series. What you see next is source. So its source is CSO, frequency is annual, and the unit is in rupees. Then you see the period 1951 to 2021. So this the data. The earliest data is 1951, and the latest data is 2021. What you see here is tree, which means that this data has hierarchies, which means there is either a parent or a child to this data, subcomponents or data, or this is part of a component from which the series starts, or a child. So you click on child, for example, and it will show all the child series. So you see a new tab has opened up called children, and what you will see here is these are all the different the child series of that. So real PFCE on domestic market has these subcategories into it. So beverages, food and beverages, clothing, housing, electricity, etc., etc. So these are all the subcategories. And I can close this tab, go back to it. The other way you can see for this data is you can click on tree. For example, it opens up a tree view where you can see the entire tree in a graphical layout. And sort of these are the filters where you can use and filter the data based on source or frequency or subcategory. But because in this case we've gone from selected a single category and a subcategory, you will see that there is only one category and a subcategory here. So let's go ahead and click on this. And unlike other sources where you can get data from, what you see here is a graphical view. So the data gets displayed in a chart, and you can then either interact with this data using these functions, let's say data transform or frequency transform or data analytics, or you can simply say, okay, I don't need this, I just need this data in an Excel or a CSV. So you can click on this export button, and you will get data in the form of a CSV or a PNG, and you can sort of take it and use any spreadsheet application to analyze that data. But you can do a lot more here itself. So for example, this is an annual data. The absolute value of data is of less relevant because in absolute terms consumption tends to grow. What you're looking for, let's say, is what has been the year on year trend. So you can go into data transform, you can click here. This is the series on which you want to apply, and you can simply say, okay, I'm looking for year on year growth. So you can click the year on year growth option, click on apply, and what you will see here is that this is now a year on year series. So you can see the most latest data set or sort of year is March 21, and because of the pandemic, the private final consumption expenditure declined almost 7% on a year-on-year basis. So this is why, and again now you can download this data into a CSV if this is what you want. The other thing, for example, that you can do is you can revert back to the original data and say none. And click apply, and you will go back to the original data as it was. So anytime you want to go back to original data, you can clone that. So let's try and again do, let's say, 2 year growth, because 2020-21 is distorted because of the pandemic. So let's see what the 2 year growth might look like. So if you do 2 year growth again, because the latest data is 2021, the number is negative, but it is only 1% decline compared to March 2019, the latest data. Now, the additional thing, for example, that you can do is you can do basic data analytics. For example, you can click on that and you can say what the mean has been or what the median has been. or what the standard deviation has been, and you can select the time period over which you want to apply it, whether you want it on the entire history or whether you want to select the history. If you click on select, you can select the start date and end date, but let's for now look on the entire history. You can hit apply, close this window, and what you will see here is the summary statistics. So this the summary statistics have been generated on this time period. The mean has been 4.3%. The mean for this entire data, the median is 4.32%. So it's sort of there isn't a great skew in this data, and the standard deviation is 1.87%. So you sort of get a brief sense. So the latest observation is obviously much below the average, but if you look at the year before, for March 18 to March 20, the growth was 6.09%, which is slightly above the average from 1951. So this is sort of how you do the search. Now, in case this data, for example, was a monthly data or a fortnightly data or a quarterly data, you could use a frequency transform to compare and to change the frequency of the data from, let's say, monthly data to a quarterly data, or a fortnightly data to a monthly data, and so on, and then the other thing, for example, that you can do is you can add data. In case this data has state level data, you can compare for data for different states, or you can simply add a series. So for example, because these are the related series, so for example, I can compare food and beverages, and I can say submit, and what I will see is the food and beverages. Now what has happened here is that the PFCE data, we have used a function on top of it, so it is in percentage terms, whereas this data, the data that we just added, PFCE, is in absolute terms. So now what we can do is convert the second series also into a comparable series. So for example, the new series that we've added, we can do it a 2-year CAGR, and then both in data sets will be comparable. So this is, for example, comparable. So now the food and beverages growth has been 4%, whereas total consumption growth is -2%. So in the latest 2-year period, food and beverages have done better in terms of consumption than overall consumption. Again, at any stage you want to output this data to a CSV, you can do that. You can also sort of set a title to this chart or edit the source from the edit button. And obviously, if you want to revert back to the old data, you can always say none. You can apply, and then use, and that takes you back to the old data wherein you started from. So this is how quick overview of using search and the visualization engine on IndiaDataHub.